Hey, this is Stephen Bonacore, the Podfather of Gaming, and I'm here with another preview of an upcoming game, something again that is near and dear to my heart. Anybody who knows my favorite game of all time is War of the Ring, and this is War of the Ring, the card game, coming out at Essen from Ares Games. I was lucky enough to get a demo of the game, played the full game with one of the developers, Roberto DiMeglio, the president of Ares Games, at Gen Con. Later, I got the prototype. This is only going to be a prototype, not the production quality, but it's got some great art on it and things like that. You're going to really see what this thing looks like. And then I just recently played it again with Roy Cannaday of the Dice Tower and my good buddy Rod Phelps and Justin Jacobson of Restoration Games, all fans of the IP, who's not a fan of Lord of the Rings, and fans of the game War of the Ring. So I'm going to give you a chance to take a look at the game, pre-production copy, prototype, let's call it that, and then I'll come back for a final thought. In War of the Ring, the card game, 2 to 4 players compete on 2 teams, the Shadow against the Free Peoples. Each player has a unique deck representing the strengths and weaknesses of the different factions involved in the war. The Free Peoples desperately try to complete their quest to destroy the One Ring, while at the same time defending their homelands from the encroaching hordes of Sauron and his evil allies. The Shadow must quickly strike and decisively before the Ring Bearers can complete their quest or try to slowly corrupt Frodo, burdening him with wounds, toil, and sorrow for the loss of his companions. During a round of play, you'll take turns playing cards representing the characters, armies, items, and events of the War of the Ring. At the end of each round, combats between opposing cards on the same battleground and path locations will be resolved. You'll gain victory points by winning combats. The standard game, the trilogy scenario, can be played by 2 to 4 players on 2 teams and encompasses the entire narrative of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, from the Shire to Mount Doom. Additional scenarios are included: the Fellowship of the Ring, a shorter scenario focusing on the action in the first book; 2-player duel, a full game designed to be played with 1 deck per player; and 3-player duel, which can be played with 1 Free People's player against 2 Sauron players, Shadow players. Sorry about that. Okay, I wanted to read that narrative to you so that you understand the general idea, which you probably did know because you're probably a fan of War of the Ring. Who isn't? The components we see here. There are 60 Free People's cards, and those are shown here and here. These 2 are separate decks. One is the Frodo Baggins deck in this case. He is the lead character. There's Frodo in this deck, but you'll find the other hobbits. And you'll also find in this deck the wizards, the wizard Gandalf, and the dwarves. And in the other deck, it's the Aragorn deck. You'll find many other people of the Dunedain, Gondor, the elves, and Rohan. So I have actually placed the decks here in looking like it's a 4-player game. This deck here would be then the Witch King's deck, the named character in this. There are also other, again, in here. And this is the Saruman deck. I played Saruman in the last complete game, and it was awesome. You'll notice the words demo across all the cards, my loyal viewers. This is because this is just the demo copy of the game. It is a prototype. Component quality will be greatly raised in the final production, of course. So, 60 Free People's cards, 30 and 30. 60 Shadow cards, 30 and 30. Oh, by the way, yes, I've said that this is Saruman, and you also get the Southrons and Easterlings in this deck. Here you get Sauron and all of its armies. Now, also as shown here, every player is going to get a ring that can be used once. If you use it, it's out of the game, and it's going to be used for special effects, drawing cards, for instance, during the game. One-time use in the game, very much like the rings in the board game. This is the starting player token, which will flip back and forth as the various factions take a turn, and this marks whose turn it is. We start out with a Frodo player turn, to a Sauron player turn, Witch King player turn, to an Aragorn turn, to a Saruman turn. Here we have the location cards. These are called battleground cards. You'll notice they come out of this deck or this deck. The Free People's Battleground cards are going to be where the Free Peoples are defending, and the Shadow defends at its battleground cards. And then there's the Path card, and these are very interesting and different. So there are 9 times 3 Path cards that are in the game. You only bring out one Path 1 card. The other 2 Path 1 cards will be discarded once we are on the second path, which happens each turn. Now, there is a possibility that a card play can say, you know what, bring out another Path 1 card. Randomly, you'd bring one out, or it might say, bring out Buckleberry Ferry, because the hobbits have gotten to Buckleberry Ferry. That's where we are right now. This one is Bag End. That's really where the whole thing starts. I'll show you the third one while I'm at it. The third one is Gildor's Encampment. So as you can see, it's going to start early in the Lord of the Rings, and we're going to go all the way down to the final path, which is, here's the Crack of Doom, or it could be Orodruin. Sorry for my bad black speech pronunciation there. Or Morgai. Could be the last location on the path. Each turn, you're going to bring out one battlefield, and it'll alternate. First, it'll be a Free People's, in this case, right, a Free People's battlefield, and the next turn, it's going to be a Shadow battlefield. And you'll always bring out one path as well. And paths are very important because only certain cards can be played on a given path. Only certain cards can be played at a given battlefield. We'll talk about that in a moment. What else do we have here? We have some very nifty player reference cards. You'll notice that bottom 2 say Trilogy, and the other ones say the dual scenarios. As I mentioned, there are different scenarios you can play in the game. We also have way over here, we have Corruption tokens. These are won as victory points, essentially, during the battling at various locations. There'll be victory points for the Shadow player, of course. And we have other combat tokens. These red ones are for the Shadow player. These are defensive tokens for the Free People. We have shields, which are defensive tokens for either player. As you can see, they're two-sided, and extra offensive tokens, two-sided for either player. And just a turn order marker right here that's going to swing around here. And that's it for the components. Now, generally what's going to happen is Frodo, as the first player, is going to start placing cards into his reserve, or at a battlefield, or at a location. Let's take a quick look at Frodo himself, right? We have many, many different kinds of cards here, right? So on Frodo, we see the symbol of his faction up here in the corner. We have this little indication here. Frodo can be played at any path location from 1 to 9, which is all of them. We don't have any other cards sitting right here that show that, but you know what? Let me grab this card from the Witch King's deck. You notice the Witch King can only show up at locations at paths 1 to 3 or 5 to 9. If we're at path 4, he cannot show up. I don't remember why, but it's probably places where, well, he just can't go. You'll notice in the center, it tells you what he is. He is a hobbit, and he's a character, obviously. Let's take a look at some other things. Wizard, character. Gawain the Windlord. So they're considering the eagles as wizards, which is pretty cool. There's Gandalf the White. Oh boy, he's out already. So here is Shadowfax. He is an item, considered an item. You must equip an item to a specific character, and then it remains there. So he's a mount, and it has an effect if he is in the reserve. Now, et cetera, et cetera. So there are characters. There are general armies. Armies are another type of card. Quick, there's a lot of armies, obviously, in the Witch King's deck. There are Mordor orcs right there, obviously. And there are symbols on these. Let's take a look at Gandalf the White's amazing symbols here. On Gandalf the White's card, he has 2 strength offensive symbols. So when played in combat at a shadow battlefield, he'll be doing offensive. He'll be adding offensive strength. If he's played at a location of the free people on a battlefield, he'll be adding 3 defensive strength. And he's obviously very powerful. Gandalf the White, when played, remove Gandalf the Grey from the game. While in reserve, draw 1 additional card each draw step. If Forsaken from the top of the draw deck, cycle this card instead of eliminating it. This is a very good time to mention what are the different concepts of the cards and their states. Obviously, this is your draw deck. Duh. If you discard a card, it is called cycling. So in fact, in the beginning of the game, you get dealt 7 cards, and you're going to take 2 of them and face down cycle them. They're discarded. That's it. Not a bad thing. They're fine. If a card is used to fight on a battleground or to claim a path, that card is forsaken. It is eliminated from the game and will never come back. Let's take a look at Frodo Baggins. If eliminated for any reason, including being forsaken, cycle this card instead. This does not apply to any wielded items. So if you think about it for a second, you have to have Frodo in the game. So if Frodo is eliminated for any reason, including being forsaken, forsaken is a special case of eliminated, but they mean the same thing. They are removed from the game. Frodo is not eliminated from the game. He goes to the cycle pile. So you really need to manage those cards very specially. Obviously, you have your draw deck. You're going to have your cycle pile, and then you're going to have the out of game, can't come back in unless something weird really happens, and I haven't seen that. That's called the Forsaken pile, and this is your hand of cards over here. And every player will have exactly what I just said. So, back to the general way this is played. When cards are played, they are played in front. I don't have a lot of room here, so don't take that out on me. When cards are played, this is an item. It cannot be played directly into the reserve. But let's say, for instance, that I had a dwarf here. And of course, at this moment, finding a dwarf in this pile is becoming very difficult. And I don't know why. Maybe this is not the deck that's supposed to have the dwarves in. Let's change that up to, here we go. That's not, probably he's supposed to be in the other deck. So, right here. Herbs and stewed rabbit, and it can be placed on Frodo or Sam. So, if Frodo was here in my reserve, cards can be played into your reserve. Cards can also be played onto a battlefield, onto a location or a battlefield. So in either case, if Frodo was here at this location, he would be adding 1 defense. That's what this little symbol is. Let me get close again. That's the defense symbol there. He'd be getting 1 location defense, and I could play the herbs and stewed rabbit on him. If in play, you may use your action and eliminate this card to take a Hobbit character from your cycle pile into your hand and then draw 1 card. Very cool. Frodo at bag end, eating at the moment. Pretty kind of cool. If Frodo wins, if the free people win this location, normally both of these cards would go to the Forsaken, the eliminated pile, and the stew will do that because that's its normal play. It would be out of the game. But Frodo, if eliminated for any reason, including being Forsaken, he goes into your cycle pile. So, the free people, the Frodo player first, will play either cards into the reserve. Why would you play a card in the reserve while playing here? Because he might have a better effect. Maybe he can't come here. Maybe he can't go to path 1. Maybe he can only go to path 2, 3, 6, someplace later. So you might play him into your reserve. You might actually use that card for a cycle. This is a very good time to mention that when you play a card, you must cycle a card. You play a card, you cycle a card. This moves cards through your deck quickly, and it gives you the decisions that you have to make. Do you want to get that card out now in front of you? Or you know what? This can't even be played until say, path 4. I'm not going to use this for a while. I'll throw it into my cycle pile. Or I need to play this on a specific location to get its biggest benefits, like it's not so great at Peligir, but hey, maybe it's really cool at Edoras. So we could wait until maybe Edoras comes out, or, we'll cycle him for now and we won't use that card. Play a card to reserve, or play a card to battleground, or to the path and cycle a card. That's what the player does. You do that, that's your 1 action. Play passes to the next player, to the next player, to the next player. And we do that until everybody passes. Everybody might pass but 1 player, and they can keep taking actions if they have the ability to do so. So that's very cool. You can have a nice extended turn sometimes if you continue playing cards for a while. Once everybody's passed, you're going to figure out who wins at the battlefield and who wins at the location. So you'll notice that this battlefield is worth a victory point to the free peoples. That's not a lot, 1 victory point. Some of these go up to 3. Bag End is worth 1 victory point to the free peoples. If the free peoples win this, they just get the 1 victory point. The 1 victory point in both times. If the shadow player beats the free people by multiple numbers, like they put like a 5 strength here at Peligir, and the free peoples only had 2 defense symbol, and I mentioned that this is you'll see these on cards as the offensive symbol. That difference between the shadow player's attack and the defense of the free people is going to then cause corruption. So the shadow would win this for the 1 victory point, but they would also get 2 corruption, which is actually 2 victory points. That's the way that Shadow can increase their amount of victory points. Shadow, I believe, always only gets 1 victory point, even when the victory points on these cards are higher. Here's one where Rivendell, if Rivendell is kept by the free peoples, it's 2 victory points. The shadow only gets 1, but if they can get lots of corruption onto the card, that's more of their victory points. So you can see Minas Tirith, 3 victory points if it's held by the free people, 1 for the shadow, but if corruption can be added to that, that's big. And you'll notice it's going to be very hard for the shadow player to take this because they start out with strong defense, like as in the movie and the books. Taking a look at some of these, the shadow has to defend these locations like Umbar. So some of these other symbols on these cards are very interesting. This will show you that in Umbar, only the Southrons can be there. This is the symbol of the Southrons. So the Witch King player cannot play cards here. Only the Southron player. And who can show up here? Both wizards and the Dunedain and basically Gondor can both show up there. That's a 1-point location. Let me get to some bigger location here. Morannon. We know Morannon from the board game. 2 defense to start. Both Sauron and the Southrons can show up here to defend. But we have Rohan, we have wizards, and we have the Dunedain. All can show up here to attack. Show you a couple of these. I showed you Rivendell already. 2 defense to begin. That's elves, of course, and wizards can show up. And there, finally, we see the symbol for the Witch King player. Sauron, essentially, right? Again, more interesting. And every time a card comes out, this effect occurs. So we're going to continue playing from path 1, then to path 2, then to path 3. Battlegrounds will come out. Every end of every time when everyone passes, we figure out who wins these, hand them out to those players. They're going to get those victory points here, and or corruption. If the Shadow was able to do a really big job, they get corruption. And we're going to continue until we go all the way to the path 9, possibly the Crack of Dune, as you can see. Crack of Doom, not Dune, as you can see right there. In the end, the player, of course, with the most victory points is going to be the winner. That, my friends, is a general overview of War of the Ring, the card game.
Okay, so there you have it, a preview of War of the Ring, the card game, a game based on War of the Ring, the board game. Of course, it has a certain DNA with it, mostly thematically, but of course you're going to get that feel of the Fellowship marching through the different locations of Middle-earth to hopefully dunk the ring, while the Free Peoples are mounting attacks, and of course the Shadow is mounting attacks against the Free People. An epic game. It's a big game, pretty big, but you should be able to complete this game easily within 2 hours. The box specifically says it is 120, somewhere on here. I'm pretty sure I saw that. 2 to 4 players. Phenomenal game. Catch this at Essen or on pre-order right now at the ariesgames.eu website. I'm Stephen Bonacore, the Podfather of Gaming. See you next time.